One of the sad things that came out of the budget speech yesterday given by Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana is the fact that over 46% of South Africans are now receiving a grant. It's close to 50% of our 60 million people. It probably means it's close to 30 million people that are receiving grants in one form or another in this country. Someone said in a comment that apparently they applauded when he said that. South Africa is by and large a capitalist state, but there is no country in the world that is pure capitalist. Capitalist meaning that everything is privately owned and privately run. A big chunk of our country, a big chunk of our economy is actually built on communism, socialist principles. We don't expect business people to build the roads and to make sure that there's healthcare and to make sure that there's schools. We entrust governments to do that. One of the major differences between capitalism and communism is that in a purely capitalist state, private citizens take care of everything. And in a purely communist state, government takes care of everything, which means you almost get taxed at 100%. And then government is expected to take care of everything. There's no space for private healthcare, private schooling, and all these things. It's tragic. We've become a welfare state. That's what we are. Our people have become dependent on government as God. If you ask a poor person, where will you get food? No, government says. Where will you get a house? No, I'm waiting for government. It's been 20 years. If South Africa was a home and we as the citizens were a family and the president and the government were our parents, we're literally in a situation where our parents have given up on developing us as their children to become contributors of this home. They see nothing wrong with giving us handouts and turning us into glorified beggars for the rest of our lives. And they see this as a solution. Almost 30 million people receiving grants. 9% of our population is people over the age of 60, about almost 10%. So about 6 million people are over 60, which means they earn an old age grant, which is over 1,000 rand. Then we've got about 16 million children that are under the age of 18. And I like to think the bulk of them, if not 80%, they receive the child grant of 440 rand a month. Then there's RDPs, of which over 5 million have been built. Assuming that 3 people live in each, that's 15 million people are housed for free. We've got free healthcare with over 2,000 clinics and a number of hospitals. We've got feeding schemes where kids eat at school, or some of their parents get food packs at the end of the month. People want to applaud that. Our government is working. It's not working. There's no dignity in begging. There's no dignity in constantly asking another man to give to you. And sadly, it's not even our government that's giving them these things out of their pocket. It's from us, taxpayers. This country's got 15 million people that have a job. 15 out of the 60. 15. Of those 15 million, only 3 million of them. Only 3 million of the 15, I think that's a fifth of those people actually qualify to pay personal income tax. Because the average income in this country is about 3.5, 3.6 thousand a month. And tax only kicks in if you start earning over 6,700 a month or so. So you've got 3 million taxpayers who are taking care of half of the nation. Not only half of the nation, but if you look at the tax that's used, 40% of the close to 1.2 trillion rand that's raised in tax. Almost 40% of that goes to paying salaries for your president, for your deputy president, for the ministers, for the members of parliament, for the teachers, police, nurses, doctors, and other administrators, traffic cops, and these other guys. Taxpayers are being milked till they bleed. Then they add e-toll. People don't know that toll gates are a form of tax. People don't know that in this country, paying school fees is a form of tax because 67% of our schools at basic education are free. They're no-fee schools. So the 33% at the top that are paying school fees, it means they are paying an extra burden an extra burden onto the tax they're already paying. Only 10% of our population qualifies or has medical aid. 90% of our people, 9 out of every 10 people don't have medical aid and rely on public healthcare. Which means if you have medical aid and you're using private healthcare, on top of your tax, you also pay an additional tax in medical aid and private healthcare costs. I saw yesterday that when it comes to the tax regimes, a person that earns 100,000 Rand is taxed about 37,000 Rand of that money. When you start, that's personal income tax. When you break it down, you start seeing that after paying personal income tax, then next comes, for most of your purchases, another VAT hit, value added tax hit of 15%. All the fuel that you're going to be putting in your vehicles, about 40% of that also goes to government. Then there's your rates for your home. Some people estimate that between 60 to 75% of your income ends up in government's hands in one way or another. Sin tax as well. We're working for government, for a corrupt government, for an incompetent government, for a government that is not about uplifting the people. A father that realizes that his family is not doing well does everything he can to, number one, acquire assets that the family can use to improve their lives. Your father goes and he buys a shovel and a pick and a hoe and a fork and a tractor and a sewing machine and other tools that the family can use to produce things for the family. Our government not only relies on tax money, but on top of that, they constantly go overseas to go and borrow money to keep funding consumption, not production. I heard yesterday that our interest on foreign debt is going to about 330 billion Rand a year. 330 billion Rand a year in interest only on the debt overseas. Debts that we need to feed people, not to teach people how to feed themselves. And your government doesn't really care, because if they taught you how to feed themselves, their share portfolios would get weak because the poor would no longer buy from ShopRite, from Pep. They wouldn't drink from SAP. So their share portfolios would fall to shit. They know that if we empower these people and we give them seeds and we teach them how to farm and grow their own food, and if we teach them how to build their own homes, they won't rely on Builders Warehouse and Build It and all these other companies that we have a stake in. These companies that pay tax to us, that give us board seats, that fund our political campaigns. We've come to a very scary place where our government wants to consolidate power by any means necessary. And if it means stripping you of your dignity and making sure that you have nothing and rely on them for everything. And by nothing, I'm not just talking material things, I'm talking psychologically. You no longer have an ability to think and do for self. How are we going to compete with other nations in the future if our children don't know how to plant a potato? If our children don't even know how to build a rondavel? If our children don't know how to use a spade, a hammer? Where's the dignity there? Where's the pride? The Afrikaans people of Oranje, led by Karel Boshoff, speak about the fact that during apartheid and even before, one of the mistakes they made was giving too much of the labor to black people. And they've realized that it's fundamentally important that they as Afrikaners learn to roll up their sleeves and do for themselves again. Oranje has been built by white Afrikaner hands. They believe very much in growing their own food. We know Afrikaners are big on farming. We know that they're big on having weapons and protecting themselves and not relying on the police. We know that they've built their own schools. The Curos of this world, never mind your Paul Roos Gymnasium, never mind your Grey College, never mind your Waterkloof and Afrikaanse Macy's and Seuns Hoërskool. Never mind those. They've built their own banks because they realize there's dignity in doing for self. Their own media houses. Our black people are standing in queues every day, queuing for 350, queuing for 440, queuing for 1,300 Rand. There's no dignity, there's empty hollowness, and we have become ghosts of people. And your politicians see nothing wrong with making you ghosts of human beings that have zero dignity and zero ability to take care of themselves. If we don't reject being a social welfare state, we will crumble as a nation. And nations that are very much about doing, the Chinas, the Indias, the Americas, places in Europe that believe very much in hard work, in the concept of getting up and doing for self, in realizing that if you want to build a strong nation, if you want to build a strong family, your father, your mother must teach you how to do for self. I have children that can grow food. I have children that can run a business. I have children that can make clothing. I have children that have enterprise and know how to solve problems. Not children who wait for me till 9 o'clock at night. Why have you guys not eaten? We're waiting for you to cook. We don't know how to. We don't know where to go to buy groceries. We don't have money. We need you. And you pride yourself in, if I'm not at home, these kids are not going to be able to do anything. How much power do you need? When you die, your kids will become paupers and beggars and orphans to other people. They will become other people's problems. Over 40%, over 46% of our population is receiving one or other form of grant. It's absolutely embarrassing and shameful and frankly disgusting. And if you don't see anything wrong with that, if you don't see anything wrong with your mom and your dad constantly begging from the neighbors for foreign aid, constantly begging from other people to feed you, the children that they made, fucking every night to make 8 babies, but someone else must feed and raise them. When your parents are able, they've got hands and arms and feet, they've got a brain, they themselves can turn themselves into tools and be productive, but they're not, they're beggars. Your forefathers had 100% unemployment. They had no formal schooling, but they had dignity. They could grow their own food, build their own homes, take care of themselves, and even build their own weapons. We have lost our dignity, and it's thanks to these bogus politicians that we have who are fucking destroying our country. It's fucking atrocious, and something has to give. Something has to fucking give. Taxpayers need to rise, stop being fucking weak middle class, and being so dependent on your job, and take a stand. We can't carry on like this. Our country is going to shit. And some of us who have a bit of talent, a bit of brain, when this country finally implodes, we will leave and go to other countries and let this country eat itself. And these same politicians that you guys worship are going to leave this country and go settle somewhere else until every poor person has killed each other, and after the dust is settled, they'll come back and they'll start the cycle again. I'm disappointed.